Let's do a quick walkthrough so you can sort of get the gist of what we're talking about here. What we're going to do is we're going to use Docker to run Postgres. So you could go through the effort of downloading Postgres onto your local machine, set it up, configure it, test it, mess around with it until you get it just right. Or you can go to Docker. You can ask Docker to do it. Now, it turns out that Docker has an image for Postgres. So let's go get that image. Before we do that, let me just show you what I have here. If I do a Docker image ls, you can see that I have no images. There's nothing here, right? And if I look at containers, this Docker ps -a, and -a says show me everything even if it's not running. And you see I have nothing. I have no containers, no images. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, Docker, give me the image. Docker pull. So I've told Docker to go pull the latest, by default, Postgres image, official Postgres image. So you notice it's going to, you see a bunch of stuff happening here. It's downloading a bunch of layers, and it's almost done. And now it's done. So now let's see if I actually have that image, right? So let's do Docker image. And you can see here is the Postgres latest image. Here's the image ID, right? And I've just downloaded, and it's 417 meg. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run this image. So now by running it, I'm going to create a container. There it goes. So now the container has launched. This is the ID of the container. I have chosen to give it a name so that I can use the name to refer to it instead of this nasty hex stuff. And I can say Docker ps, and now it should show me that I have a container running. Now imagine that that container is almost sort of, you can almost think of it sort of like its own little machine running out in virtual space somewhere. And I can actually attach that machine and do things with it. So I'd like to run SQL commands against that database that's running. Well, how can I do that? Well, very simple. I can actually attach to that container and actually run the psql command. So let me do that. Let me tell Docker, hey, Docker, what I want to do is I want to connect to that container, and I want to run the psql command. And oh, by the way, the user is Postgres. And there it is. So now I'm actually connected to that container, and I'm in the Postgres prompt. So I can do things like /l, which will show me the databases. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a database. Create database. So now I've created a database. Now I'm going to connect to it. All right, I've now connected to foobar. I'm now going to create a table. There it is. I've now created a table. I can show that that table has been created and also some sequences for it. And I can, I believe I can describe book. Yep, there it is. So there's the definition for book that I just created. So now let's copy some data into this table to make it actually useful. To do this, I'm going to do something that's even by Docker standards is clever, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect again. I'm going to have a second connection to this container. So let's go grab another connection to that container. Only this time, I'm not going to run psql. I'm going to run bash. Again, conceptually, this is just like connecting to a virtual machine or connecting to a Linux host out there. Here I am. I'm now I'm inside the container, right? I don't know if I can actually see my process. Well, there aren't a lot of commands available. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file that has my data in it. let's cat it, make sure I got it. Yep, there it is. Now that I have the file created inside the container, because remember the container can't see outside. The container cannot see my machine. It can't see my Mac host. It can only see itself. So now I'm going to go back up here to pSQL, and I'm actually going to use the copy command to copy that data in. And there it is. Notice the copy 12 says I have 12 lines. So now let's look at it. There's my data. Let's select from book where author is equal to John Grisham. Look at that. John Grisham's got 4 books in there. The guy writes like crazy. That's basically the usability of Docker in a nutshell. I can quickly grab a decent sized service like Postgres or HBase or Solr or any big, reasonably sized, meaty service that normally I would have to install to use it. And I can actually run it at will in Docker. Here's some finer points about it. You can actually, now that I'm done here and I have my data, I'm going to exit out here. So my container is still running. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stop the container. So I can tell Docker, look, just stop the container for right now. I don't really need it. Now in order to do that, notice down here I still have a connection. So watch what happens when I do that. Notice it just kicked me out. Bye. So at this point now, if I do a Docker PS, there's nothing running. Now what's interesting is I can actually show that the container is still there with the -A. It's just not currently running. It's dormant. All right, now I'm going to restart that database. I don't do Docker run because Docker run creates something new. What you want to do is Docker start. And there it goes. It is now started. So if I do a Docker PS, it shows it's running. Now the question is can I connect to it? So let's go back down here and run that connect command again. Let's connect to foobar. And let's do select star from book. And there's all my data. So the container has state. And as long as you don't destroy that container, that state is kept around. However, as soon as that container is destroyed, you will lose all that data. So there are other ways to passivate and persist your data, and we'll go into that at some point.